On today's episode, we'll talk about the operator-actor connection, imposter syndrome, Perry Mason, the Americans, and of course, starting out as Elvis. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out The Breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, The Musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling. Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Margaret. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to the Op Podcast, the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. My name is Dave Comides. I'm your host, and this is going to shock everybody, but I'm really excited today because I have two great guests, actually. An actor by the name of Matthew Rhys and Don Devine, who is an operator who just keeps on coming back to this show. But we're going to get to Don in a little bit, and I'll explain why. Matthew has been around for quite a while, doing some amazing work. The Americans, The Post, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Saturday Night, Perry Mason, and I mean, he was in Cocaine Bear. So let's just, I don't know if we need to say anything else. Emmy win for The Americans in 2018. Nominations for The Americans, Girls, Perry Mason, from the BAFTA Awards, the Critics' Choice Awards, the Golden Globes Awards, the Screen Actor Guild Award. He's had 50 nominations and 6 wins, and just keeps on putting out amazing work, and is someone whose work I have enjoyed. It's really cool to have you here, Matthew. Thank you for being here.
Dave, thank you so much for the invitation and for that roll call. I don't think I've ever heard it before.
It's pretty impressive, right? You've done some impressive work, but really all I want to talk about is Cocaine Bear. I mean, come on, let's be honest.
All I want to talk about is Cocaine Bear. And also, and this isn't a joke, how I pitched the prequel to Elizabeth Banks. When I went, what about everything that leads up to that moment where that poor man banged his head and trying to exit the airplane and falls to his death?
And is it, when can we expect to see that?
It'll be on in your screen. No, in cinemas 2027.
Exactly. Now, I have to be perfectly honest, and I feel badly. And Buzz Moyer, if you're out there listening, I didn't actually see Cocaine Bear, even though Buzz was the operator on it. Did you play the bear, or were you a different character in there?
In many ways, I played the bear. I like to think, but truth be told, I was actually the reason that kilos of cocaine fell from the skies of Tennessee. So the true story being, and of course now I can't remember his name, the man who I played, was a DA operative who was smuggling cocaine himself in small planes. Realized his plane was going down and started throwing the cocaine out of the plane, thinking, I know what I'll do. I'll parachute out and then collect these kilo bags of cocaine from Appalachia, and I'll be from the Appalachian Mountains. I'll be fine. As he exited now, there's debate as to whether he exited the plane incorrectly, banged his head, and never opened his chute, or whether he was indeed having a fight with his karate instructor at the time, was thrown out of the plane. You see, this is why the prequel should be made.
I need to see this movie now. It actually brings up more questions than answers, it sounds like. But I'm fascinated by it, and I think the sequel needs to come around the corner.
This I agree.
But we've jumped ahead of ourselves a little bit. Tell me how'd you get into acting? What's your story?
Well, I am of one of those countries, the Celtic countries, being Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, that pride themselves enormously on being storytellers, with an ancient tradition of oral storytelling, and we take that very seriously. And twice a year in Wales there's this enormous cultural event whereby the youth are heavily encouraged to participate in all kinds of mediums, really, arts mediums, be it poetry recital, drama, dance, acting, any sort of performance, really.
That's great.
And it was from those very early formative years that I certainly decided that my my place was to be in the performing arts. From a very early age, I was kicked onto a stage and told to get on with it.
Now, I have to ask you a question. I looked up your Wikipedia page, which does suggest that you're from a small mining town in Pennsylvania, so you may want to change that. But it said that you got your start playing Elvis in a on stage at 17 or something like that.
I did. It was a school production. It was the musical of Elvis. And
great.
That was kind of the big cementer for me when I was like, you know what, I really do want to do that. I really do want to dress up for a living and wear makeup. And it was at 17 when I played Elvis that I told myself I was going to apply for drama schools and see how that turned out.
Can you still do a good Elvis impersonation?
Yes, I can. Usually, I do need a little bit of a warm up. So obviously,
okay, I pulled it out of you. All right. Yeah. Well, my next question was going to be, can you do it in Welsh? But that's all right. So basically, you knew by then. Like it sounds like before then, you even kind of wanted to do it, and that cemented it.
It was funny. It's funny. It's the performing arts, I think, in Wales, as a result of these kind of huge cultural events, are very revered and encouraged, but not necessarily taken as means of a career. So when I told, certainly my family and friends, like, oh, I'd like to do this for a living, I think it's met with, no, this is what you do as a hobby. We love the performing arts, but no one does this for a career. And it was then I went, no, but I do want to. I want to follow the hallowed turf of Richard Burton and Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah. So you ended up going to drama school?
I did at the age of 18, a little too early, I believe. I made my way to London to the Royal Academy to study for 3 years, and really did hone my craft in those 3 years. Was really given, the whole big thing is giving you the toolbox, as they say, of a number of skills that can be called upon when needed, and that's certainly true. The training is very intense, a lot more intense than maybe my friends who've gone to university, who, the days are long, it's 6 days a week, the hours are intense, the workload is intense, but it's good as well. They are preparing you for a profession, both theatre and TV and film, as well, a long days where you work intensely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, are they just preparing you for theater or is there a difference? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the age-old question that is always heavily debated. But yes, when I was there, they were taking their fledgling steps into film and television work, whereby they were bringing TV directors in to work with us on camera.
Oh, wow.
And developing the skills that really... Possibly not enough. I know for a fact now the students are heavily taught in TV and film in the smaller things that you're not on your first day of set. You're not completely cold in how to hit a mark or what wiping a camera is. Which is when I was told for the first time, I thought they were going to give me a cloth and I was going to kind of give it a good polish. They were like, "Can you wipe the camera?" And I was like, "Okay, with what?" And they were like, "Oh boy,
that's awesome."
Yeah,
I love that.
So they're certainly wise to the fact that a large majority of careers now in performing arts are obviously in front of the camera.
Yeah. And so you said that was 3 years. So and is that when you're in it's the Royal Academy?
Yes,
London Royal Academy. Is it just acting, like all day acting and nothing else? It's almost like a trade school.
It is. The amount of skills that they think associated with that are large and varied. So, the acting proportion is relatively small, because then on top of that you're doing voice, you're doing fencing, you're doing clowning, you're doing physical work, you're doing posture, movement, laban, singing, the number of different elements. Scene study, all that. It really is a very full and varied curriculum.
That's amazing. And this is going to be a silly question, but do you pull from all of that, like throughout your career? Or is it some of it that you realize wasn't important? Or
no, I would say there's almost at one point I've used everything that I was taught in college. When in those moments you've gone, my God, thank God I did this, or the voice work really helped me because I'm going to have to shout all day. It's not like theater where you're having to project for 2.5 hours a night. There are
Yeah.
certain scenes as well, where you're shouting for 12 hours. So you need to sustain yourself. You need to know how technically not to, blow your pipes in your gasket.
Sure. That's amazing. And back then, did you have a thought of where your career was going to go, but to the stage or to the screen, or did you just go, I just want to do this?
No, hand in hand with obviously what I did in Wales, I was a great lover of cinema in the broader sense. My first movies were E.T., Flash Gordon, and they blew me out of my seat because I didn't
Wait,
think
Flash Gordon blew you out of your seat?
Oh my God, Flash Gordon.
Wasn't Flash Gordon the one where he was a football player or
Yes!
something? Like, wasn't there something with a football?
To this day, like soundtrack by Queen, and it was only
the
other day that I played the soundtrack to my son. I was like, "This is gonna blow you away. Listen to this."
And
dun, 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 dun. And he's like, and it's like, "Wow, this is really good." I was like, "I know." And then I tried to show him the film. He's like, "I prefer the soundtrack, I think."
Yeah. The soundtrack is probably a little better than the film. Maybe it holds up better.
I built it up too much.
I love the fact that the two movies that you mentioned are E.T. and Flash Gordon. There's something really poetic about that.
Those are the two I remember earliest and had like the greatest impact on me as kind of sitting in a dark room with a large screen and just utter awe and bewilderment that you could be transported so wildly and vividly, by this medium. That I then went on to kind of become a great lover of film. So sorry. The long answer to your question is when I finished, in drama school, all the boys, especially the girls, used to roll their eyes. We would obsess with American cinema. We would just obsess with, De Niro and Brando and Keitel and all those actors we always longed to be. But we were, predominantly on stage in tights going, "My Lord, forsooth or not," So Hollywood seemed not just across an ocean, but like another planet. And
but why did the girls roll their eyes and the
because
boys
they know that you're just wanting to be Brando. You're just we're all there trying to smoke cool in tight t-shirts, okay. And they're like, "Relax, boys, you're wearing tights, okay? So you're not Harvey Keitel." We're like, "Okay, all right."
That's fantastic. Just to go back for a second, it just made me think about something. Like the way you talked about E.T. and Flash Gordon, which I have with me, it was actually, the first one was Star Wars, because I remember sort of coming out of Star Wars and going, "Wait, that's not real."
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, it's not real. It just makes me wonder, we were all sitting in a theater surrounded by people, and it was this social, like we all laughed together and we all jumped together and whatever. And I just wonder whether moving forward, people are going to have that same feeling that we had sitting at home watching a movie with 4 people, right?
No. I think the short answer is no. And, harking back to what I said about, the Celtic countries and Wales, especially being an oral storytelling tradition, it was the same element. It was the experience was communal. So you experience everything in a large group. And I think cool. the loss of that to me is, I know Scorsese and all the others bemoan it too, is huge.
It's it just, I don't mean to go into a big sad thing, but it suddenly made me go, "Oh, that's really sad." That just
it is sad.
And
I insist on taking my son to the cinema because I'm so determined for him to have these big moments, especially in those formative young years when you can literally hear them go, because those
now,
moments.
Does he appreciate it? Like, do you recognize that he's getting it? That's great. Yeah, unfortunately, it's probably the theaters probably aren't as full as they used to be, which was part of it too. I remember, it's like Saturday night, opening weekend, you'd go and stand in line for 4 hours or whatever, and you'd be like crashed in there, but it was great. Yeah.
No, it was part of it. It only added to the kind of anticipation of it all.
Yeah. So it sounds like the question that I asked half an hour ago, which I forgot about. It sounds like you were sort of thinking like, "Oh, it'd be cool to be on the screen like Brando and these guys and whatever.
Yes, but the reality of it felt so far away. I do remember reading a book. It was Richard Burton's biography when he was kind of, and it was the first time I kind of went, oh, actually, no, it is achievable. Like,
yeah,
Welsh boys left and went to Hollywood, and obviously Hopkins was there doing it too, and he was to us the kind of guiding light of it is achievable, but kind of how you went about it was almost like mythical. It was like we need spaceships to get there. Do you know what I mean? It's
well,
like
there's also there's no like roadmap, right? Because I mean, that's one of the things I've found from this podcast is there's no these are the 5 things you do to make it in this industry. It's like everybody has a totally different way that they get there.
Of course, and there, by the grace of God, go we all. You know that, and you look back and you go, wow, what a series of chance, mishaps and chance meetings.
Yeah,
that got me here.
So you mentioned Anthony Hopkins, and I had a note here because I wanted to ask you this. Pretty early on in your career, you landed the role of Titus in the movie of the same name. Was it called Titus?
No, I played Demetrius, and Anthony Hopkins played Titus.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. Yes. Okay. But suddenly, I think at a relatively young age, you're working with Anthony Hopkins and Jessica Lange.
Totally. So immediately that was like, I was doing a two-handed play in London with Paul Bettany, and this American agent walked up to me afterwards and he was like on his way somewhere, and he came to see the play, and he's like, hey, you should come to LA and come do some auditions and come to my office. And then all of a sudden, it felt achievable. It was like,
wow,
oh my God, I can do it. I was 23 at this point.
Wow. And so you'd been out of school for like, what, 2 years or
2
something
years.
like that? Or 3?
Yeah, doing theater.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So I did a job in New Zealand, and then I said to my agent, hey, I want to stop off on the way home in LA and take some meetings. And okay. So I did, met up with his agent, signed with him. And then he said, I'm going to put you up for this movie called Titus with a director called Julie Taymor, and it's with Anthony Hopkins and Jessica Lange. And I was like, oh my God. He's like, this is madness. So I go in, and then within a couple of days, I get the part. And I was like, oh! I said, oh, Hollywood's just like the Klondike. You just got to turn up and hit gold. And I was like, it's easy. It's kind of great. Like off I went to do this huge movie in Rome, and then unbeknown to me, every time I went back to LA, I couldn't even catch a cold, let alone a job for years after that. The great Hollywood lesson.
That's well. What's it like? Kind of you were essentially an unknown being thrown in with these people who, you must have sort of been like overwhelmed by, I would imagine. Right?
I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified because.
How do you deal with that?
Not very well, to be perfectly honest. I just remember I remember telling myself, don't speak, because that way there's less chance of me making a fool of myself. So I just remember telling myself, watch and observe and listen to.
That's actually really good. That's really good. I actually tell younger operators, like when they're coming up, it's just like, listen more than you speak.
Yeah. There's a great Welsh proverb that says you were born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen twice as much as you speak. And I kind of adhere.
I love that. That's great. That's fantastic.
I adhere to that.
Amazing.
Because I think that's the way.
So not to harp on that, but the reason I'm asking about it is because I think that, I don't know, when I read that, I assumed that there's probably a lot in that to people who, everybody who gets somewhere in this industry has that moment where they're suddenly thrust into something that's bigger than what they are.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to hear how different people deal with it because, my thing was just sort of like, all right, you're going to get fired. We all know that. So just like try not to get fired too quickly.
Yeah. Yes.
and like no sudden movements,
Exactly.
Like you said,
don't draw attention to yourself. Yes.
Just kind of like do your thing. So, when are you going back to your trailer after every scene, just going, I don't even know what I'm doing or.
Oh God. Yeah. Very early on, it was so reassuring of two, there was like 3 or 4 instances. One, we were doing this huge scene, and Jessica Lange was just incredible, wiping the floor with everyone and just dominating. And then they went, cut! And then she just went, oh, God, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I just went, oh! I It stopped me dead in my tracks. I went, even they feel that way.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, what
And
a
then
great story.
I know, and then
Yeah.
Hopkins. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, go ahead, please. Say
No,
Hopkins.
I was going to say Hopkins. A couple of instances very early on just put me right at ease. One, he talked about his own imposter syndrome, and this is like he'd won the Oscar for Silence of the Lambs. You know, he'd done Shadowlands, Remains of the Day, and you're like, oh my god. And he's dealing with imposter syndrome that he said, I'm just waiting for someone to say, no, we met the other Tony Hopkins. And then he did this. He was doing this huge speeches as Titus. And I remember he finished once and he just went, "Oh my God, what are the critics going to say?" And I just went, "What?" I said, "Do you even care?" Yeah.
By the way, we could stop this right now, and that right there is like that's gold. I'll tell you, I don't have an Anthony Hopkins story, but I have a secondary Anthony Hopkins story, which is shameless name drop. I was working on this movie with Liam Neeson, and it's 2 a.m, and we're watching them reset an explosion or something like that, and we're both sort of standing next to each other and just kind of watching them do their thing. And it's 2 a.m, and he turned to me and he goes, "This is a stupid business, isn't it?" And it was so funny because I was sort of thinking like, what am I doing here? And I mean, granted, we love it and whatever. And I said, it is kind of, I said, but it's sort of great. And he goes, yeah. And then I don't know why, but he told me this story about, it was funny because he goes, you know, Anthony Hopkins? And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm aware of who Anthony, but he asked like sincerely. And I said, yeah. And he goes, he's a good friend of mine. And, you know, every time we see each other, we give him a big hug. And last time I saw him, I gave him a big hug. And, you know, this is like 2016, right? Or whatever, long after Anthony Hopkins is a huge, huge name. And he said, it gave him a big hug. Anthony, how you doing? And he came close and he whispered in my ear and he said, it's great. I'm great. They haven't figured out that I don't know what I'm doing yet. So it so jives with what you're telling me. It's like so wonderful to hear that. But it's like you said, imposter syndrome is real. I mean, do you like you're a very established actor at this point. Do you still have that thing where you're like, God, I don't know what I'm doing?
Every day. Every day. Yeah, I really do. I mean that sincerely. In that, you know, I just finished this job for Netflix, I really struggled with it. I was like, I have no. After all the tools I think I've acquired, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then I said to myself,
"That's so refreshing. That's so refreshing." And so, do you get nervous before jobs?
Oh God, yeah. In fact, this next one I'm even more nervous about because it's like a comedy horror, which I'm like, that's a genre I've never done. It's like, and I'm already wigging out about it. But then on the last Netflix one, I kind of said to myself, I know what I'll do. If I just become very still and say things very quietly and almost monotone, then they can't pin anything on me.
And did that work out, you think? I mean,
who knows?
We'll find out. All right. Well, there you go. No, but that's really amazing to hear. Because yeah, they're every job. I'm sort of like, oh, is this the one where they're going to come up with something I can't do, or you know, something I haven't seen before or whatever. And then invariably you figure it out, right? I mean, on whatever level.
That's all we do. I mean, that's what kind of the greatest thing about our job is in those moments as a collaboration. You have to. I remember my sister's husband was a tank commander in the army, and he came to set one day, and he couldn't quite believe that all these elements combine in this one singular moment where everyone is quiet and all the cogs turn to make this one piece of magic. And he says, if you were to break it down component to component, like, and present it as a new form of a medium, people go, this is madness. This is absolute madness. So when he broke it down, I was like, wow, it really is. And it's kind of unbelievable that we do it day in, day out. But to that, speaking to what you just said, you know, you look at a scene and you have an idea of what you want to do and ideas you're going to bring in, and then you get there, you rehearse it, and then you have that moment, you go, oh, none of this is working. So how do we all now figure this out? And it's the greatest, sometimes a day's the greatest jigsaw puzzle you'll ever make, and the most satisfying when it works.
Well, you know, it reminds me of, I mean, we've both worked with Tommy Shalami on The Americans, and I've worked with him on a couple other things. And he's the perfect example of, I know exactly what I want. I know exactly what I want to do. I have the shot worked out. I know how the actors are. And then he gets in the space and he's like, yeah, none of that works. So we're going
Yeah.
to find something, or that worked, but this works better. And it's funny because, he'll sometimes do a rehearsal and he'll look at me and he'll go, "You have something better." I go, no, I don't have something better. Yeah, you have something better. I'm like, no, I had the salami for lunch and it's not sitting well, like what or whatever. And he, but he doesn't care where the better idea comes from. It's like, you're in the moment, what works, right? And
That to me is the greatest testament to those directors who are willing. It shows great maturity. Usually shows great experience to know when to take a better idea, and not be worried about whether people will think less of you, or do you know what I mean? It's those
yeah.
who know themselves and their medium incredibly well. Go, no, what do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it comes, like you said, it comes from a place of being secure, that like, no, I know what I'm doing. I just know that we don't all have all the answers, which is really
Yes.
the key. But
Yeah.
you said something about this next project that you're doing, not specific to the project, but about, you being nervous about it or whatever. Do you try to pick projects that scare you or that you're not comfortable with?
There is a degree of that. It's a great luxury that I do look at things and go, oh wow, I've never done anything like that. I wonder, if I can do it.
But I think a lot of times that's where, I mean, as an operator, I know that like where you're not quite sure if you can pull it off is where you're sort of extending even farther than what, I mean, that's where the good stuff lies, right? Like right on that precipice.
Always, when your adrenaline kicks in, your pistons are going, all of them are firing, and you're kind of going, there's no other way now. Otherwise, death or glory.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
leap
Yeah. And
into the unknown.
Well, it's like, who was it? Cortez, who burned the boats and basically was like, you guys got to fight. I mean, you don't have any choice. I took the job. I know I can't do the job, and I'm going to get fired, but maybe I'll get fired in a couple of days as opposed to. So one question I want to, I mean, there's a lot of questions I want to ask you, so I shouldn't keep saying that. One of the things that amazes me about actors, and a friend of mine, Chris Harhoff, who's an amazing Steadicam operator, pointed this out to me one day. He said, you and I are looking through the camera and we're seeing, Matthew Rhys with the sun setting behind him and an eagle flying in the background and this beautiful, beautiful landscape. And he's facing us and he sees three people who haven't, shaved in 2 days and someone eating a sandwich and whatever. How do you, even if it's not that bad, I mean, all the equipment and whatever, like, how do you mentally push all that out and be in the scene that we're seeing that you actually don't see in many ways?
I would say that to me is one of the greatest technical struggles I still struggle with.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And I hate to be now someone of an age, because I started very young. I was 12 when I started in television, because there was a BBC Wales opposite our school, and I started doing little things for the BBC. So I'm now the person going, I've been doing this 38 years now. But what I have noticed in crews, and this, the younger ones, is that they don't quite appreciate the stillness that the older crews, the older generations did and do to a degree. Of if you are still behind camera, it helps us enormously, and more and more you having to ask, hey, can we just try and keep it still in between action and cut?
Yeah. Oh, that, I mean, I'll get on my soapbox for a minute, which anybody who listens to this podcast knows where I'm going with this. I think that's largely due to digital, because I think that it used to be that when film was rolling, something important was happening. I know as an operator, I had to overcome that when we went to digital, and it was like, well, nothing's happening.
I totally agree with you. Film was the greatest laser focus element that I've ever worked with, where you knew by that if it was rolling, it was incredibly expensive. And it wasn't to be taken for granted. So you focused hard. You knew your chances were slimmer. Therefore, you had to come in and hit it hard. And in this day and age, you don't even cut. And everyone's like, and like they're like, have we cut? No, we're still rolling. Do you know what I mean?
or actually, the thing that I like is, when you're out there, and it's basically just you and the boom operator and the actor, me and the boom operator and the actor. And the actors are looking at you going, did they cut? What are we doing? And you're like, I don't know. Let me go find out.
I know,
like,
they're just talking.
And there's a powwow out there. It's
I know,
kind
and
of
you go,
unbelievable.
shall we cut? And yeah, I tell you the best takes I ever did when it was filmed was when you kind of went, you'd done a take, and then the director goes, "Can we go again?" And the focus puller goes, "Quick one on the end, right?" And you literally go, "Oh my god!" And everyone speaks faster. Everyone's intention is sharper, and everything is elevated and magnified. And the director always goes, "That's the one. That's the one.
That's the one." Yeah.
Instead of a director coming in, you doing digital, going, "Just hey guys, just doing a bit, pick it up, sharper, faster, cleaner." If you hear focus puller go, "Quick one on the end," you're like, it's like something just goes, your spine gets straighter, and you go, "It's death or glory."
That's great. Now, I have to ask you, as a Steadicam operator, I've done a lot of these huge oneers, right? And I'm sure you've been involved with them as well with other people. Yeah. As an actor, do you feel the same thing that we feel, which is like, 10 seconds in, if I bobble a line, I'm okay. But like once you get to like 2 or 3 minutes, you're like, I don't care if a car drives through the scene. I'm not like, do you guys have that same?
Oh, always. But it's that weird, I don't know if it is for you, it's that weird perversion of kind of, the director goes, "Okay, I really want to do this as a one." And you go, right? But then there's a part of you that goes, "Oh, this is going to be great." And when
everybody starts to get into it, right?
Yes.
It's like everybody's sort of excited about it. Those are the best ones.
They are. The adrenaline kicks in, and everyone's focus is a bit, and you kind of go, it's time to bring some game. You have to bring your game. Yeah. And I do love it, but by God, as you approach the end of that scene, if it's a 2 minute, you're 3 minutes, you're the perspiration coming out of places that are unseen to the camera and is just cacophonous.
That makes me feel very good, because as I get to the end of those, I'm like, just please don't let it be me.
Yeah, that's all you think. That's all you think. Let it be anyone but me.
That's exactly right. So I think this is probably a good time to bring in Don Devine. Don, for those who don't know, is a camera operator, and he seems to just keeps coming back. But he has a tremendous amount to offer. So this is his third time on the podcast. And John, just called you John. And Don,
call me John Lithgow.
Don will be played by John Lithgow today.
Nice choice.
Don, thanks for being here. And Don is actually the reason that Matthew and I are speaking today. So, Don, you want to fill us in on why that happened or how that happened?
Well, here's going to be a turn. So far, this has been amazing. You guys have been great. I mean, I've sort of lost myself. And then when you said, now we're going to introduce Don, I was like,
he's in the bathroom. He's probably in the bathroom. Yeah.
So what was the question?
Yes. So for anybody who's still listening, the question was, no, by the way, I would just go back and I would say, so far, Matthew, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I expect it to completely go downhill from this point on, but I don't know why. It's just something has changed. But no, Don, tell me about your relationship with Matthew. How do you guys know each other?
From the first season of Perry Mason, I think we were all pretty much in love with everything. I mean, we had great
mainly each other.
What?
Oh,
I was going to lead up to that.
Oh shoot! Sorry, I always blow the wad.
Okay, no HR.
You're free to speak. Unbound, ungagged.
It was one of those perfect shows that everybody was thrilled. Just that phone call to say, we're going to do Perry Mason. And the first reaction is like, why? And then they tell you it's going to be Los Angeles for Los Angeles. So it's like, we can shoot the palm trees,
because it's 1950s, right? Or
30s.
30s. I'm sorry. Okay.
That was again, when they said it's like awesome. 1930s, we were just like, yes, 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 and yes.
Oh, that's great.
There was I don't know about Matthew, because I'm sure he was on earlier and probably questioned everybody, because it was he has to deal with a little bit more of the chaos than I do. I have to deal with set chaos that has a finite ending. in pre-production, it's like, we lost that location. We have to get another location. So we have to change the schedule to this. So sorry, you had to learn those lines. We're not going to get to that till the end. And I mean, all the stuff that they do is I'm just the whole time just going, I got the easiest job here.
Well, was that the first time you guys worked together?
Mm-hmm.
It was.
We did a makeup hair test, and I think we shot like a pre-tax day.
That's right.
Where we did the black and white for the theater projection.
Yeah.
Down the road. And Matthew came on, and the AD introduced us, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to make your life miserable."
Is that true, Matthew?
Yeah.
Wait, is it true that you said it, and is it true that you did it? They're two separate questions.
Well, it's true I said it. I'll let Don answer as to whether I did it or not.
No, I can tell you the answer to number 2 is no. He speaks very fondly of you. But let me ask you a question.
It wasn't true. Never.
Well, because Don mentioned that. Is it exciting for you as an actor to do a period piece like that? Is that just like a whole nother level of cool?
Oh yeah, everything Don just said, I can concur enormously. You know, as a fan of certainly noir, Los Angeles kind of, you know, Raymond Chandler, you know, all those kind of old detective stories that I loved. It was to me, especially growing up in a very small, damp island across the Atlantic, the exoticism of what Los Angeles in the 1930s was like, where I get to wear a fedora and smoke cigarettes. I was like, oh my God, finally my boyhood dreams have come true. So this job meant, you know, it was huge for me. And it was also, they very kindly, or might say foolishly, allowed me to produce on that one. And Susan Downey was incredible in kind of, because I said, look, I want to learn as much as possible. Just if you're willing to let me into those meetings, I'd love to know what is the madness you talk about. And it was just like, I went, how much is a technocrane daily? We don't need a technocrane. That's insane. A Russian arm? What's a Russian arm? We don't need one.
Fantastic. So you basically stepped right into it very quickly.
Telling Dave Franco, you don't need a technocrane. You don't need one. Use your imagination.
Well, you know that old joke, the producers, $100. Why do you need $50? There's no way we have $25 in the budget for you.
Yeah, here's your 10.
Exactly. And then Don has to figure out the shot on set with
just
the
make it look
want.
like we have a technocrane.
Exactly. So you guys, I mean, it goes without saying, but to anybody listening, really established a relationship together and have kept in touch. I know. That doesn't always happen. Is there? I mean, was there something about Don as an operator that you realized? Like, what made you realize? I personally think he's fantastic and he's the real deal. But like, how do you as an actor know that?
Well, there are lots of different reasons, but I can very safely say, hand on heart, not because he's on this podcast with me, Don is the best operator I have ever worked with, without question. And we
only worked together that one day, so I just want to throw that out.
I know. So I can't say I really got to know you or your work. So in lieu of that, Don Devine is the best I've worked with.
That's sweet, but here's the question. What I want to know is why do you say that? What makes you say that?
There's many different reasons. First of all, Don is one of those rare operators who works not from composition or anything to me, this is what he obviously does, but to me, what seemingly is his leading light is narrative and what the story is. And as soon as you have an operator who does that, you are off to the races. And also, he is a man, as you can see from his incredible artwork, of such sensitivity that what he can glean and take away from that narrative is not just surface value. And then, so he's working on so many different and very deep levels in order to serve this story. When you marry that with this incredible sense of composition and framing, it elevates the project unbelievably so. And then one of the other things, which, and this is the hard thing to describe, I think with operators, there's an incredible dance you do with them. And I've never had a dance partner like Don Devine, who is a reader of the human condition and can know instinctively what movement is, when movement will occur, how emotion affects movement, and will usually, more often than not, be one step ahead of that in order to not just capture it, but frame it beautifully.
That's amazing. Don, are you still with us? He's shaking his head.
I'm glad I'm retired.
Yeah, right. So am I, because now I have a chance at another job since you're retired.
But you should teach Don Devine. You should teach.
He should teach, by the
way.
Let
me say at the beginning of back to when we first met, and he said that if I was like 25 years earlier in my career, my operating career, which goes on indefinitely, but I think I probably would have been intimidated by that.
But I'm sorry, intimidated by what?
By Matthew saying whatever I said he said.
I'm going to make your life hell.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I went, and inside I just sort of smiled, and I thought, you know what? If he's going to say that out loud the first time, then he has a good sense of humor.
He's okay.
Because nobody really even knows that there's an operator there most of the time. You have to sort of introduce that, and especially a day player. I mean, I would say by the end of the first episode, we were, all three of us, 1, 2, and 3 on the call sheet, were all on the same page, you know? And as an operator, and should be as a director, the good ones have it, is that to me, the most important thing to get from Matthew is the performance. And once he knows that, then that's what we try to get. But what Matthew needs, what Juliet Rylance needs, what Chris Chalk needs, is all a little bit different. And so I have to deal with, when they're all in the same scene, it's kind of interesting because they all kind of are on their best behavior. I think when there's somebody else that they're playing off of, and the concentration level, I mean, I totally agree about the film and digital. I mean, it was just, I know I could turn it on. I knew when the director said cut, I didn't turn it off. And they knew that I didn't turn it off because we had that conversation.
Wait, talk about that for a minute, because I've talked about this before, but I want to hear you say what
it's totally important, because even if they break character and they just give you
just a smirk, or
as the character, it's like, oh my God, we got it. And I'll tell the actor always, I'm going to cut when either the prop guy runs in the background, the boom mic drops down, or you turn away. If you're there thinking, I'm rolling. I mean, I'm not going to take that chance of, and it happens, I would say it happens a lot more than it doesn't happen, where there's something there, you hear on dailies cut, and then they do something and you just go, and then I'll cut, because the prop guys fill in the glasses or whatever they're doing. I don't know what they do.
Well, and I mean, now that we don't roll the camera anymore and assistants roll and cut the camera. So one of the things that I always say, and I say this to younger operators, is tell your assistants not to cut until something breaks the scene and it's unusable. Because sometimes, in Matthew, I mean, I'm not, maybe that, maybe you're aware of it, maybe you're not, because you guys are so in character, but it's like, there'll be something where it's just like, like you said, like you'll finish something and not be happy with what it does, and you'll just sigh or something like that. But there are these real moments that you can't replicate, and sometimes they're fantastic.
I totally agree. That even when you hear cut, and if there's something you're still thinking through or whatever, you go, I could do this little look, and I totally agree about it. Until it's properly editorially done. There are, more often than not, I think I'm still trying to kind of, you just give them a little something that might work, might not, might help, might not.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing is there's no downside to it. What is it? An
No.
extra like 5 seconds of rolling or whatever. But sometimes you grab, and I don't know about you, Don, but I've had those moments where the director will come over afterwards and go, "Were you just rolling?" You go, yeah.
Yeah.
So you got that, and it's like, yeah, that's why we do that. I mean,
Yeah.
and they're all excited, and then of course it doesn't make the cut, and that's a whole nother thing.
And then you go, "You lied to me."
You liar. Yeah, exactly. So Don, a question to you. You said, having 3 or 4 actors and figuring out what their needs are. So as an operator, how do you go into a new project like this where you meet Matthew for the first time? I'm assuming you met the other actors for the first time. How do you start figuring out what actors need? And actually, Matthew, is it even fair to say that I mean, to call it that? I don't know. Is that right?
What needs?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's the right, I mean.
Oh no, I'd say it's absolutely. One thing, just to sorry, I'm going to interrupt Don's answer, but
No.
one thing Don gave me immediately is also a great sense of safety, that you kind of go, my concern is now not with the operator, because he's working on a level that far exceeds probably, most of us in the scene. But what it does is I don't have to, some jobs with possibly a more inexperienced operator, you're very conscious of the operator and helping them in the framing of something, as opposed to knowing full well I was absolutely safe to do what I needed to do, and that is a great luxury.
So just actually on that note, so there are times with other operators where you're completely conscious of the camera and you're thinking, I mean, I don't want to stand up too quickly, or I don't want to do this too, and so it obviously affects your performance. That's because that's not all actors are like that. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No,
Don can attest to that.
Yeah,
there are a
I'm
couple
sure.
that don't even realize that we're on the show. But that's amazing. So do you just then, when you don't have an operator, like maybe when you were working with me, where they don't know what they're doing, so you basically go, okay, I have to change my physical, manifestations to
And
accommodate
sometimes
this person?
it's little things like pace, but yes, if you're kind of second or third take and you're going again, and the director's not really telling you why you're going again, you start going, hang on, who are we going again for? And then you kind of go, oh, okay, so maybe I am moving. I'm getting up a little too quick in that moment, or maybe I'm sitting down a little too quick. I'll ease off that, and all that kind of stuff. Or my hand off, my all that kind of stuff is a little too fast. I'll slow that down.
Yeah. So Don, how do you go about figuring out what people need?
I think it's listening. I think the first week, I always feel the first week of a show is going to be pretty much the rest of the show, as long as the director doesn't leave. And that's a whole nother story on Perry Mason. But the first day was this sort of World War II battle scene that had really hardly anything to do. It's just kind of a backstory. And we did that the first day. And I think sometimes doing the impossible the first day lets you know, can you all do the impossible? So I think it's kind of an AD trick too. Sometimes there's shows where they just go, oh, let's just do this one scene, and then we'll do those drive-bys in the after. And it's like, no, let's go big. Let's do the nights the first week. Let's, get that out of the way, or the splits. Luckily Perry Mason was, really good about doing splits and not tiring everybody out right away. And it was just a good experience. And I think the acting part for me is, I always try. That's the most important thing. And it's been the most important thing probably half of my operating career. The first half, I was kind of like a technical fruit pie. It's like all I want to do, well, maybe not half, but maybe it was 5 years. I just wanted to keep him in frame. I just didn't want to screw up. I didn't want everybody to look over and go, he didn't even move. Why did you pan?
Yeah, really,
You know?
you lost him, and he's still sitting in his chair. He hasn't even moved.
And that's, I think,
Yeah.
was the beginning of the listening and hearing, Matthew talk to the director and watching rehearsal where everybody was really rehearsing. It wasn't like pretend. And I remember with film, what you guys were talking about earlier, we did rehearsals. This whole we're going to shoot the rehearsal was digital. It's like nobody knows what's going on, so let's just show everybody that we don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
And you don't really want to give it all because everybody's not going to be there for that. So you still kind of coast through. And their theory, and I kind of get it sometimes, is that even in digital, when you're rolling and everybody still focuses. They don't focus, I don't think, as much because there's still this kind of thing, well, we'll just keep rolling and do 8 takes in a row. And it's just like, but then nobody knows which take was good because they all blend in. With film, it was like you rehearsed with everybody and you didn't roll. You rehearsed again with everybody, you didn't roll. I mean, a lot of times the DP would watch the first one, or the director would, and then the DP, and then I would. You get 3 film rehearsals without rolling. There was no, let's shoot the rehearsal because the sun's going down. It's like, well, maybe we should do it tomorrow.
And you and I have talked about this as a thing of like, let's just shoot the rehearsal and see if magic happens. And I always want to turn to him and go, there's no such thing as magic. The magic is that I know what I'm doing and the boom operator and the actors know what they're doing. That's the magic, is we're all good. But like, how about giving us a chance at doing it well by figuring it out ahead of time? So,
well, that's when you jump off the dolly and you go, I got to go to the truck and get my wand. It's like, I didn't know.
For anybody listening, Don actually did have a wand, and it was purple, and it put glitter out when he moved it around.
But not on set.
Got him in a lot of trouble.
He's been in a couple of parades. It's really wonderful. But I mean, Matthew, what do you think about that from an actor's point of view of like, let's shoot the rehearsal? Is that a positive thing, or no? You want to figure it out, right? I mean, I know there's some people who don't.
I'm firmly the school is like, rehearse. Train hard, fight easy. It's like why? It's like, I totally agree with what's being said. Is this thing of kind of, let's just see what happens. Let's see what we can get. You're like, I'll tell you what you will get in a minute. Yeah. So why not just take those extra moments to rehearse and then so the takes are good?
It's invariably faster anyway, because you're just going to you're going to get through all the problems and then actually just do a couple and be done with it.
And you can focus on those. I feel like the focus isn't always there, but it is with a good director, because a good director's main job is to get the performance. I think, as an operator. So what does that tell you? That I should be directing? But I can't. I need a place to hide. If I could have another camera that I could just sit behind, but a good.
I have this.
Sorry,
I have this image of Don directing, but he has a camera attached to like a hat in front of his face and just swinging it around.
And I was going, where is he? He's right there. He's the guy with the wand.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Don, with a laugh there.
That's okay. I'll take it anytime.
All right. But you mentioned.
I want to go back to, let's say there's the 3 of them in a scene, and we've done it, or maybe on our 3rd week. So I kind of got it down. If it's a group shot, it's a group shot, and they'll play off each other, and it's totally fine. And they'll get it's kind of like an extra rehearsal because we know how much that's going to be used. So I kind of just sort of let them play. Let them know I'm there, but not that I'm, going to do anything crazy. Then when we go into coverage, and this is another thing about digital that drives me crazy, is the 2 cameras or the 3 cameras. It's like the courtroom stuff. I could always drive home at the end of the day and know that I could cut that scene. And now I can't, because I kind of know where they are, and I kind of hope that they're getting what they're getting. But for you guys to go, okay, he's doing a profile, and if it's the best performance that I'm going to get, they're going to use that type profile. Why don't we have Don go in and get the close-up? And then they go, well, but when we saw dailies, we liked this better, or he cried on that eye, or whatever it was. It's just to me, and I know that they want to know what the coverage is. And a good director will say, you know, I can do your close up first. You know, maybe are you ready for that? And maybe you say, not quite. Let me work into it. So let me know that you're a little wider. I don't have to give it all. And then are you gonna do a medium? No, we're not gonna do a medium. We'll just do the sort of medium. We'll do the wide, and then we'll do kind of a 2-shot, and then we'll do the meat. And what I do is when I'm on Matthew, or if I'm on Juliet, or whenever we do their coverage specific, then I'm totally focused on them. You know, I'll tell the other actors where they need for eye line. I try to simplify that so that's not this sort of like, you know, well, they were farther away, and now I'm looking really close to the camera, and I go, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna look amazing. You know, whatever we show the audience is the reality. You know, the reality of what we're doing back here and over here, and they don't care. But if you show them that, then that's what they accept, and they go, okay, but if the camera comes over here, then you're bringing that eye line closer. So they're saying, yeah, but when I did the master, I was looking away, and it's like that was the master. So now, you know, and you need them to sort of trust you, which you get in the first week, instead of like, he keeps doing this and it's just making me really uncomfortable. But I'm totally open for somebody, and I'll try to work with that. Like, it feels weird, but I said, well, let's just do one like this and see if, let's say we're shooting on Matthew, and if Matthew's comfortable with her being closer to the camera, and it looks amazing. If we bring her a foot away, it's just wrong for the story. You know, you just have to sort of keep going. Where's this cut going to be? And I hate the quantity, and I love the quality.
Yeah.
And please tell me just what the quality is going to be. And most directors now, not to rag on most directors, but the young ones, I really want them to just say, if you get the performance, it goes back to when you guys went to the theater, and the first time you had no idea that the movie gods were humans. I mean, all you knew is the performance and the writing. And if you had the writing and you got the performance, and we all worked towards the performance, not to put you guys on, you know, more pressure. We don't really talk about that, you know. It's just sort of that's part of the process, you know. And I love that. And I'll just go back to, I'm sure you guys love when it's rolling and cutting. I mean, that's the moment where you would do for free. All the other stuff you can't get paid enough. And I can see that with an actor too. Like, you know, we're rolling, and all of a sudden everybody just goes, oh my God, you know. And then you take your moment, and I won't, you know, I'll be the last one to say, even if we've rolled and hit the slate, I'll be the last one that says set. And I'll make sure you're set, and I'll make sure the dolly grip's set, and I'll make sure make sure the boom guy is set. You know, I just sort of do a quick glance around and just take that extra moment, you know, because, you know, when I say set, the director's going to come in right away and go, set, action. It's like, let's just bring it down to doable.
Matthew, as an actor, are you aware, like, that when an operator is sort of, you know, thinking of you in that way and protecting you and making sure that you're ready before he calls ready or she calls ready?
Oh, absolutely. Don, and Don, you know, Don's the king of that, of giving you of really knowing when you need a little longer on the set, and when he says set. And I remember this first AD training a PA, giving him the space, and he says, look, I want you to call action and cut. And it was this quiet scene. This little PA goes, we're like, oh my God, Jesus Christ. Right? Then he went, okay, let's cut. I'm very sorry about that. And then I just heard him say to the PA, he goes, listen, you have to remember, the way you say action is as much a part of that scene as any other word that the actors say.
That's great.
And he's like, oh, right. And Don is like that with his set. Do you know what I mean? Like, he could invigorate sometimes when it was needed. He can settle, he can calm. He's an all-seeing eye in that sense, with who has your back. And that is invaluable. I know I find it hard for actors to kind of say this, but ultimately, unless it is a special effects centric movie or TV show, ultimately the only thing that matters is the performance. Because you don't have that, you have nothing. It's dead. And therefore,
absolutely.
and I understand, I directed a tiny little bit once, and Ken Olin, the director, said to me, he goes, listen, everyone will obsess with their tree. You've got to think about the forest. And Don definitely thinks about the forest.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that. And going back to what Don was talking about, as an actor, when there are 3 cameras on you, is that frustrating? Because you sort of like, I mean, you know where you're going to play, but still, what are they getting? Or
I don't love it. I don't love it. I'm old brigade that likes to know. I will favor where the hero coverage will be or what the hero coverage is, and that's what I like. When they sometimes on those courtroom stuff, they're like, I'm like, where's the third camera? And they haven't even, it's like, yeah, I'm like, you're there. What are you doing there? When did you set it there? And they're below you looking up. I was like, when did that happen? And then you've got this split focus thing going on in your brain as you're acting. You kind of go, I don't now know which really. Oh God, it's gone.
And then the worst thing is that the courtroom stuff, or any courtroom stuff, you're going to have 3 cameras. We all know it. There's tons of stuff to get. But I can't even be in there because we have to be on a remote head to make room for all the other cameras, and that drives me crazy.
Right there with you.
Me too.
As I hope you guys know, and I would come out and say, I would apologize. I'm just outside that door. If I am here, I do see it. I come out every take. If there's something that
But that brings something up that I was sort of touching on, which is, I think the people who I know, and Don, you're in this category, who I think are great operators. It has nothing to do with panning and tilting, and it has nothing to do even with framing. It's about storytelling, and also it's about creating a space for the actors that otherwise doesn't exist. Where, like you said, Matthew, so nicely, like you felt like you were protected there and you could do whatever you needed to do. And that's, to me, that's like emotionally and physically and whatever you need. And so, personally speaking, and you were sort of describing it so well, Don, it's like, I feel I'm about to start a show, and it's like you go into that mental space of like the first week. Okay, I sort of have to figure out what everybody needs and what I can do for everybody to help whatever they need to do, what they have to do, because what you guys are doing is so much harder than what we have to do on so many levels, I think, anyway. I think anybody could probably do what I do, but I don't know many people who could act. You're shaking your head.
Act well.
That's true.
Well, funny you should have say that.
but I think there's some truth to that. Is like, one of the things that I'm very proud of is that I've had, not every actor. There's some who are like, Dave's not going to come back tomorrow, and I'm like, okay, it happened again. But that's why I was only on that one day with you, Matthew. We'll talk about that after.
But what a day it was!
What a day it was. Actually, we did one day, which you probably don't even remember me from A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And the thing that I remember watching you was so impressive was that you looked and sounded exactly like Tom Hanks, which was really kind of amazing. And I was like, this guy, he's a chameleon. No, I think I was on C camera for that, and then I did a Steadicam shot, I think, without you that night. But anyway, that was a really cool movie, by the way. Just on a different note, was that like a cool thing to be a part of, to like tell the Mr. Rogers story?
It was, and listen, don't get me wrong. Mr. Rogers was a revelation to me when our kid was, the youngest, was kind of the perfect age when that happened, and talking to my partner Kerry, and she was like, "Oh, we should show Sam some Mr. Rogers." He got hooked because the two. Oh,
you didn't grow up. You probably didn't grow up with that. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh, that explains a lot.
But what was great was, like, when I was doing my research, watching Mr. Rogers with Sam, and Sam, the way he reacted to it, like this calm voice of reason, it was something to behold. But I realized very quickly in the research of Mr. Rogers the kind of the scale of what he'd done and how he approached visual storytelling in that the young children need processing time and, you know, all these incredible elements that no one really thought about. But as a project of working with Hanks, that was truly watching a master craftsman at work. And
He's
that to me,
unbelievable.
good grief, I couldn't fathom how he navigates not just the day-to-day workings of it, but obviously, and I saw it, you know, just to drop another name, I saw it with Spielberg. When they walk into the room, I'm sorry, Clonk, that was the name.
That was great. No, it was really good.
But I would say it was that, and I'll do it with all of them, with Meryl Streep, with Sally Field. These people, when they walk into a room, there's a different chemistry that happens, right? So then, on top of just doing their job, they're doing something else, which is making people at ease, you know, being utterly aware that everyone is watching their every move and showing you how it doesn't bother them, and then doing their job. And I was like, dear God. On top of things like Tom saying, hey, guys, I bought baseball tickets for the whole crew and their family. And I was like, I got a coffee truck.
I got a coffee machine.
Yeah, I literally did. That's
awesome.
what I told Hanks.
Yeah.
I told him.
The Mr. Rogers movie was coming out, and we were shooting like the day that it was released. We were out in like Peru or somewhere like an hour out of LA, and we thought, well, maybe at lunch we could go down to the local theater. And it was like, do they have a local theater? But I remember, God, it was probably the first week, and I said to you, how did you enjoy working with Tom? And you told me, and you said, did you work with him? And I said, yeah, I worked with him almost either right before you or right after you on Greyhound.
Yeah.
So we had this sort of like, I mean, once we both knew that had happened, I think we sort of related that into that the ghost of Tom is still with us. And you guys are very similar. I mean, he is so, as you, so aware of what the camera's doing, what he can do to, like, okay, if you're on the radio and you know, Shelley Johnson was the DP, and he would talk to the stand-in, John, who's been with him forever, and say, you know, maybe you can tell Tom, and Tom would go, whoa, whoa, whoa. He'd be on an apple box, like 10 feet away from me on the pilot house, in the pilot house, just sitting there. And he would come over and he would show, you know, I'd frame it up and Shelley would look and say, just a little more to the left. Yeah, like there. Do you feel that? Oh, yeah, that's not a problem. And he goes back and sits on the apple box, and John comes back in and they continue the lighting process. So you're the same way. You are probably, I mean, I can put Anthony Hopkins, who we can't call him Anthony because you have to call him Tony. You can't call him Sir Anthony Hopkins, because the first time I did it, it was like he came over to me and he says, I'm Tony, and I said, oh, I'm Don, Mr. Hopkins. He looked at me and said, no. And I said, you're not Mr. Hopkins?
I thought you were going to say, I'm not Don. Who am I?
And then he was like, I'm Tony. And as soon as somebody does that, you know, it's like, it's so fantastic.
But
you know?
Matthew, is there something about being from across the pond where you guys don't have the same sort of like loftiness? I've worked with so many big actors who are British and who just are like, yeah, it's my job and I'm a normal person and whatever. Is there some truth to that, or have I just been lucky?
I also think that us lot who cross the Atlantic, we realize how privileged we are to be working not only in the industry but in the place where it, certainly for me, was where it was formed and founded. Like,
oh, interesting.
Los Angeles to me was a mecca in its sense, and to come to Hollywood and work and to kind of, especially with Mason, to kind of play a part that to me was so quintessentially Hollywood. I was just greatly appreciative. The one thing I wanted to touch on is like in that generation of actors who are a touch older, that they have that I don't necessarily have a basic understanding, but not to their degree, is their understanding of light. And like Hanks would talk about light in a way I was always like, oh God, he really knows his light. Sally Field the same. And I don't know whether it's a generational thing about understanding or knowing, your lighting, but their understanding of it seems to be just that kind of level above my generation.
Well, I don't know about you, Don, but when I hear that, the thing that I think about is, those guys and women all came up in an era where you were lit. And so you had to hit your mark because that's where the light was, and you could feel the light, and you knew you were hitting your mark because you could feel the light. And now we sort of light we light spaces more than that. And so, you can be on your mark, but you could also be a couple feet off your mark and still be lit. I mean, you think that's it? That's the difference, Don?
I think that's part of it. Sure. Yeah. I think, I also think television has kind of destroyed the youth of today because they get their first job on a series and they have no clue. They're having a blast. And it's like, you got to at least be within 5 feet. The scene takes place and you guys are like this is where you kind of get a little closer. This is the moment. Now, if you want to land there, and then maybe you take a couple of steps at a certain line, if that works. But I try not to get into the director's part too. And I know with Matthew and Juliet and Chris, when we had that, I don't want to say it because I don't want to say any bad things about anybody, but we all knew the show we were doing in the first 3 episodes. Yeah. Then when we do the switch and we have a new general, I keep always saying that thank God nobody's shooting at us. If we were trying to do this process while bullets were whizzing by our head, we'd be so much more in trouble. But I feel like Matthew knew that I knew, that Juliet knew, that Chris knew. And even when the day players would come in, we'd most of the time get really good ones. And I would always introduce myself and I was always let them know what's happening. If they need something, I'm right there. For them to know that I can get the director, instead of yelling, Tim, it wasn't ever Tim because Tim Van Patten would always be right next to me. He would sit right next to me and he would like, Don, am I in your way? I'm going, am I in your way? You're getting the most important. Great. This is about you two. This isn't really about me. I'm just trying to help.
The thing that you're talking about, I think, harkens back to what you were saying, Matthew, about protecting. Is like when you're on a TV show and you have, directors coming and going. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses, but the constant is the crew that okay, I'm going to go in and then maybe someone different at the helm and maybe that works better or that works worse or whatever. But like Don's still on the camera and focus puller is still the same. And all these people that I know are still telling the same story that I'm telling.
Yes, in the same way that I want, or not even that. It's elevating it in a way that I can appreciate. So Don becomes, in the turbulent times of episodic directors, Don becomes your true north, and you need that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge part of it. So one thing I want to ask you for younger camera operators, are there things, we talked about being still behind camera, which I totally get. I used to juggle and I stopped doing that because I found out that
you like to test the actors, didn't you?
I have little hand puppets that I put up in the air, and sometimes it works, sometimes not so much. But are there things that camera operators can do that will let you know that they know what they're doing and that they can trust you, or is that just something that has to happen organically?
It feels it's something I can't tell you. It's innate. It's something. It's a feeling more than specifics. I can put my finger on, but the operators who always look up from the eyepiece they always intrigue
during
me
the take.
Yes.
Wait. So this is a question that I have is because when I'm on the eyepiece, I have my right eye over the eyepiece, and there's sometimes where I will open my left eye just to make sure that I have quickly to make sure I understand where something is.
That's different. Taking your eye away from the eyepiece.
Okay.
Yes, to look at something and then to go back to it. I always do this.
Because you're like, something really bad is happening
What's-
if he took his eye off.
Am I about to be murdered? What's behind me?
Especially if it's an actor off camera on that side. So you kind of block them. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh,
it's
there's-
like, don't. You got to be thinking about everything. You can't just
Yeah.
think, you know,
Yep.
I'm
Myopic.
invisible. I'm the operator and I'm invisible.
Yes, you can't think myopically.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no question about that. Oh, that's that's very funny. So, but opening the eye is okay. You don't you recognize
That's
that
fine
we're
because
just,
you never.
okay.
I can say 9 times out of 10 I'd never see it or be aware.
You
of
don't
it.
even know it.
But the head
Because
movement,
the head movement,
away
I could
from
see.
the
No,
eyepiece,
that
you're always like, what went? What? My immediate thought is, what's gone wrong?
something big has happened. I
Something
like
big
that
has
actually.
happened.
I can't think of
Behind
a
me with
time
an
I've ever
axe.
done that, but I'm guessing when I was younger I did. But I often wonder, like when I open up that one eye, if they just see this big like white whale eye there that's like, peering at them. But yeah.
With an operator who had a glass eye, so his one good eye was kind of, looking down the eyepiece, and then the glass eye was kind of staring, bearing into your soul.
Don, I'm going to ask you to Don and I talked before this. Oh, Don wanted me to specifically ask you this question. As an actor, is learning your lines and understanding marks important?
Prerequisite, I think I said.
Oh, is it a prerequisite?
Yeah.
There were 3 things. Sorry to do this. I just love dropping names. There were 3 things Anthony Hopkins said to me.
Tony. I think it's Tony.
So I call him Sir Anthony Hopkins to his face.
No, you don't. He wouldn't.
No,
let
I
you.
don't. No, because I just like being punched by him. He would say, if you're on time, you're late. Know your lines and everyone else's lines, because like knowing your cue lines is just as important as knowing your lines. And then the third was, be bold and greater gods will come to your aid.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Has that happened yet?
No. I'm still waiting for them.
But you got 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
The last one reminds me of I did the last season of Ozark with Laura Linney and Jason Bateman, who are both unbelievable in their own rights. And Laura told me that she has this wild way of preparing that, I mean, that's like diagrams, and she knows everything up, and she reads the script every night. And I mean, just like unbelievably prepared. And I asked her about it once, and she told me that her father was a director, directed plays. And he said that if you're prepared, you can be relaxed. And if you're relaxed, you can be fierce.
Ooh,
and
good.
I said, that's really cool. What does that mean? And she said, it means that there's nothing they can throw at you that you can't handle, because you're so prepared and you understand it so well that they can turn it on its head and you just take it all at stride. And I remember thinking, like, that's what I see every day with you, is just like this complete and utter prepreparedness.
I would say that harkens back to what we said about Tommy Schlamme, in that he's done so much preparation. His shot list is so meticulous that when he turns up and sees something better, he can throw it away because he knows the story so clearly.
Yep.
And that's when you can kind of go, he's so prepared. He has great freedom.
He's unbelievable. I directed an episode of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, which was this short-lived thing with him. And I remember going into his office and going, can you help me with this one scene? And he said, yeah. And I said, I can't see it. And he looked at me and he said, that's your entire job. And I looked at him and I said, I understand that, but I'm not you and I'm having problems. Could you possibly help me out? And he was like, sure. And I was like, I realize that I'm failing right now, but I'm asking for your help. But it's, that's exactly him. It's just, he just hammers away at it until he understands it perfectly. And he also, by the way, more than any other director, you can name any point on the script and he can tell you what came before it. He can tell you what came after it. He's got, it's amazing. And it comes out, it comes through.
And as an operator, you want that director.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like I know the scene before and the scene after. And I don't think Matthew ever asked me, oh, what happens before this? Because that's the process that they do the night before and the morning of. And, it's like you try to figure out what are the 3 scenes that lead up to this. Did we already get that? And then I'll bring that up if it's a director I feel I can work with and say, well, we shot that and we kind of did that. Maybe we should keep that more on the down low and not make this a big da-da-da-da, because we already did the da-da-da-da. So you got to kind of work with the writers too. But I think it's so important that when an actor will not be comfortable and then they start to just stall and they want to know, okay, what was the scene before this? And the script supervisor is at the monitor with the director, and I can say, well, that's when you did this and you did that. Or you weren't in that scene. It was the scene before that you were in that you did that, which set up that scene. If it's a good script, everything is setting up as a puzzle, but you have to sort of put it in, the path of the finished product.
But I think to what we were talking about before, Don, when that question does arise and maybe I'll go find someone and find out, and you can turn in and go, well, this is what happened and that's what happened. That's the kind of stuff, and Matthew, you tell me if I'm right, that I think makes actors realize, like, oh,
somebody's
this guy
paying
came
attention.
to play. Like he knows what he's doing. I can trust him. And then the next time it's like, forget it. I'm just going to ask Don or whatever. And of course you don't know. And it's like, well, I was wrong, but
yeah, well, that's what I meant about Don's sense of narrative, not just for storytelling, but at a more basic level. He knows the script inside out, and so that his investment in the story is as much as yours, which is as reassuring as it is encouraging.
Yeah. I have a very simple question for you that may not be simple, but is acting hard?
I continue to find it infinitely hard. In fact, sometimes the older I get,
what about it?
Well,
challenging.
Yeah, challenging. And I suppose, I think there's a college back home in Wales that they've kind of put me on the board, and they're like, we'd love you to come and do a masterclass. And I'm always like, masterclass? Suggest I'd mastered something. And the more and more I kind of, sometimes I look at something and they go, and I don't know, it becomes more hard to grasp sometimes for me. I kind of go, there are times now where I go, I don't know what I'm really doing, but I can tell you instinctively I'm doing it. And I think that's just years in the saddle. And then other days I kind of go, I have no idea what I'm doing and I can't break down why. And then I go to set. Yeah.
Do you have the same thing that I know Don and I have had, is when you do a scene and, for us, it's, operating on a scene or coming up with the coverage or whatever. And then, something's off, but then on the way home, it suddenly hits you and you're sitting at a light, banging the steering wheel, realizing I should have done that.
Oh, that's every scene. That's every scene. Every scene is lived in the future and the past, never the present. You kind of go, this is what I hope to do with the scene. This is what I want to do with the scene. And then on the drive home, you go, God damn it, why didn't I do that with the scene?
So it's all the same. I had a student ask me, do you ever remember putting down the rig and going, I just nailed that? And I was like, wow, that sounds phenomenal. I said, usually I'll put down the rig and go, I guess they're moving on. And that probably worked on some level. And then on the way home, I'm like, I totally figured it out. Like, why didn't I do that earlier? So we're all in the same boat there. It's kind of unbelievable. But just because I don't talk to that many actors, like when you're,
but on set you do on set.
Of course. I'm sorry. When I don't talk to too many actors on an intellectual level, I should say, usually I'm discussing, and I drop Spielberg and I drop Hopkins and just
always drop them. Always drop them.
Drop as much as you can. And of course, I'm really talking about the guys who work at the deli up the street, but they don't have to know that, do they? No. But when you get a script and you start figuring it out, do you have a specific process that you go through every time? Is it the sort of the same?
No, and it becomes different every time now. And there are times when the writing is so good, you kind of go, I don't need to do much here. In fact, if anything, I need to leave this alone. Wow. David Mamet is the greatest, which helps when you got words like David Mamet goes, just say the words. And there are times, more and more of that ilk now, where I go, hit the mark, say the words, don't get in the way of this great writing. And then there are other times where I'm kind of struggling with the script and I don't know why. And I go back to my old college scenic breakdowns, how to break down a script, and you kind of dissect it in a very methodical way. And you kind of go, okay, that's what it is. And that's what this is. And you figure out your super objectives, your scenic objectives, your scenic obstacles, and all the rest of it. So you have that little toolbox in case it's kind of not working. And I just take from different elements from my life now what's needed to what I think. The best one we ever did with she was this great New York acting teacher. when we did scene study, we would read the script a number of times. Then she goes, now lie down, close your eyes. I want you to imagine you going to the cinema and your 2 or 3 favorite actors are going to act that scene. How would you like to see it done? And then she's like, now get up and do it. And
that's really cool.
That always helped me. And it still does. I still kind of imagine my favorite actors acting it, what they would do. And then I go, now I'm just going to imitate Gene Hackman now.
So, I mean, this is probably a silly question, maybe, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So, if you had a movie that you did 15 years ago, and you did the movie again now, and the same character, you're playing the same thing, would it be a totally different? Would it be different because you're a different person? I mean, are you constantly pulling from who you are?
Yes.
Where you are?
Yeah, it was one of the first films I ever did. It was called House of America. And it was a very deeply emotional film. But I think in retrospect, and it's a lot to do with youth, and in your 20s, you're so wound tight and you're doing push-ups before every take. And, the older actors are going, oh, here they go doing their tense-ups, here go the kids doing their tense-ups. That's it, get nice and tense now, kids. And we would you push too hard and there's too much emotion. And I find more and more I try and let go and do less and be more of a conduit than kind of forcing things.
Yeah, Don and I have talked actually about quite a bit about, you set up some complicated shot, and as you hone it and hone it and hone it, 90% of the time, 99% of the time, the simpler you make it, the better it is at telling the story. And it's interesting.
Yeah,
it's the same kind of thing. That's amazing.
I totally agree.
So you do your push-ups in the trailer now where nobody can see, or
I like to do mental push-ups.
Camera truck. He does it in the camera truck.
Camera truck. That's right.
Yeah.
With Don on his back.
That's what.
Hey.
Just like the old days.
I promise I won't bring that up, Don.
That's great.
Last time.
I wanted to go back to the scripts, because I can see every actor get pages on that morning, and I'm just like, this whole process should be illegal. If you guys are resting and working 8 hours a day and writing these scenes, that's your time and you're done. But everybody thinks if we start shooting and we all get really tired and exhausted and we don't even really know what we're doing, we're going to rewrite that scene the most important scene and make it worse because the actor said, not Matthew, the actor said, my character wouldn't say this. And it's like, okay, have you cashed any of your checks? You had no problem agreeing to do this when you read the original script. That's the time when you say, I'll do it, but can we work on this scene? Because it feels odd to me.
Not the night before.
Yeah, like a week before, a month before, or when the writers...
Or by the way, on set as you're blocking.
Yeah. I can see it in their eyes, and I can see them just... I mean, I know right away when Matthew's not happy. He doesn't do it outside because I don't think anybody else knows. But I know that he's... And I struggle with him, and I try to, help in any way I can. And most of it's just being there and being supportive. But
someone who understands.
I know that the scene's over, and he's just like, "Oh, we're gonna have to reshoot that one for sure." And I'm like, no, it was fine. I mean, your side was good, his side was good. You're too far away from each other to, carry you both anyway until you get closer together. So you kind of know that you can work around that and still make it good. Now, whether you feel good going home, most of us don't, and that's why we get speeding tickets going home.
Yeah. That's why we're the unlicked puppies, because if you want to feel good, this ain't the industry for you.
Well, speak for yourself.
Oh, sorry.
And another question for you, Matthew, is with someone like who you do trust, an operator, when you finish a scene like we were talking about, is everybody else is over there, where behind curtains and this and that and the other. Do you look to the operator sort of, when they come off the camera to get a feeling for whether it landed or not?
I can literally count on two fingers, the operators, and Don was really the one who had, you were the true barometer of Perry Mason.
So you do actually use that.
Yes, but only because in a very rare moment, it was an opinion I trusted implicitly.
That's
So
that's why I asked.
Yeah. But that's very rare.
Yeah. No, it's
For me
fantastic.
too. For me too. I mean, it's hard to build that relationship of trust. I mean, that's what we are all trying to do the first week. You know, even the director is trying to figure out, how can I get this from him? Do I work up to that, or do I let him go for what, let's let Matthew have one, and then maybe I mold from that. Well, Matthew doesn't like to work that way. Maybe we go, but that's what the director needs to know how to do. How does he get the best performance working with this particular actor? Because they are all different. I mean, have you ever worked with anybody as an actor that said, oh God, we're on the same page? There's always something where I know that I'm going to nail it on 3. Maybe that's like the starting point, and somebody else will be on take 5, or they want to shoot the rehearsal because that's when they feel like they're most surprised and like the whole crew. We're all surprised with the first one. But I do think it's rare. I really feel like...
Well, that's why when you mentioned this, I was like, this is great, because it doesn't happen that often, where people connect. And I think one of the reasons it might not happen that often, among others, is like, I know when I go in and I work with someone who's, forgive the word, Matthew, but famous, you're very cautious. You're very cautious of trying to want to establish a relationship, or I am establish a relationship with them, because I don't want them to think I'm trying to gain anything off of them. But the weird thing is, Mom taught me to be nice to everybody, so I'm trying to be nice to everybody.
Right.
And sometimes that happens because I know, you have to protect your bubble a little bit.
Yeah. It's a tougher predicament for you guys because. For that exact reason. So I don't.
Well, for you guys as well. I mean, there's no question about it, because I'm sure you must question people's motives and stuff like that from time to time.
There were time with Don, yes, but then he'd usually put his clothes back on and we'd be fine.
No, Don, I don't want to buy another painting. I have 20.
This isn't an art gallery. You've done it again.
My gallery's in Brooklyn.
For anybody who's still listening, and there isn't anybody other than the 3 of us at this point.
You said 4.
3. I will.
You lost somebody?
Might pay. We lost somebody. I will post another link to Don's incredible artwork, actually, and it is really quite incredible. I'll tell you, Matthew, when Don invited me over to his house to see his artwork, it was one of those things where you're walking up the step and you're like, oh, please, God, be good. Please be good. If it's on velvet, I don't even know what I'm going to say. But thankfully it wasn't. And it's truly something to behold.
It really is.
Yeah. So listen, I think, before Don, I'm gonna kick you off in a second and ask Matthew one final question. But you have any questions for Matthew that are of any interest before I kick you off?
About Notre Dame?
No. Is there any possibility that somebody's gonna watch Perry Mason and decide to do season 3? I feel like we all wanted to do. We really felt like 3 would have been perfect, and we finished the show. And this, I think, is the hard part, because the morning of that show happened 6 months after we finished shooting. It aired, and they aired all of them, and then they waited another couple of 3 weeks. And we're all just kind of going...
You didn't have closure, basically.
Yeah. It did really well. The ratings were good.
That's horrible.
But then you had such a great person running, Discovery, and... I mean that in a good way, whoever that guy is.
Of course, if they want to pick it up. But by the way, if you do pick it up, I want to be your B camera guy, because it sounds like a laugh riot, and I need one of those. But
it's a combination. You can do really, really good work and have fun doing it.
It's always a pleasure, and actually, sincerely, you're one of my favorite people to talk to, because you have so much to offer, and you're such a fun, bitter old operator.
I'm that guy now.
You are that guy, and I love that. It's fantastic.
No, I try not to be that guy on set.
I know you're not on set. No, and you're not even that. You have a lot to say, which is great. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and thank Matthew for doing this. incredible honor to be a part of this threesome.
Absolutely. And Matthew, I have one final question for you. Which is the question that I leave everybody with. So you can do whatever you want with this. First of all, thank you. This really has been a pleasure. It's been fascinating to me to listen to all this and just hear your thoughts and Don's thoughts. Someone getting into the film industry today, what advice would you give them on how to succeed, and or what do you know now that you wish you knew back when you were playing Elvis?
Thank you very much. I think more than anything, it's you realize in this circus life, and it truly is a circus as well, is that you're for the longest time I was trying to force and forge my own destiny, and unless you are truly one of 3 movie stars, you'll never do that, and you must allow yourself to go with the river and not kind of flagellate yourself every time something goes wrong or you hit a nasty bend, because you have such little control in this madness. And I agree with Hopkins. Is like you have to put the work in. The work has to be there, but the rest is completely out of your lap and out of your hands. And the quicker you realize that, the easier you'll be on yourself. And in an industry where we are not only so hard on ourselves and others are hard on us, it would be good to be a little kinder and gentler to myself. So work hard, but don't take it so personally is what I would do.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.